What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Pro v Pro, coming off a big 46-1 Bryson DeChambeau future bet for the U.S. Open. We made that one all the way back the week of the Zurich Classic, so hopefully you got in on that, and maybe we can get more of the same here at the Travelers. Justin, what did you think of Bryson, Rory, and Pinehurst as a whole?
Man, it was just a fun golf tournament. I thought you saw a lot of different ways to get it done. There's been some criticism of how could Bryson win a major hitting it that sideways on Sunday, but man, it just kind of provided a little bit of excitement, and I think they kind of joked about him. He was going to find some kind of magic, he was going to get lucky every time he hit it in the because he did. He continued to get good lies and took advantage of it, and yeah, man. And then the missed short putts by Rory, I didn't really see those coming.
Lost in how wayward he drove it, Bryson, on Sunday, is the fact that he drove it extremely well for most of the week. He was crazy accurate up until Sunday. But yeah, I want to start the conversation with Rory, because without question, the narrative is Rory blew it. And in some ways, of course he did. He got to 8 under with, 4 to play. The winner was 6, and he lost in regulation. So in some ways, of course he blew it, but 15, really difficult hole. The putt on 16 is the one that, like, there's just no way to excuse it. The putt on 18, I think, was extremely difficult. So what did you think of the last 4 holes? How much of that was Rory blew it versus how much of that was Pinehurst is a really difficult golf course? It's tough to close out a U.S. Open. And then also, like, how does the fact that he hadn't won in 10 years play into what the narrative is going to be for this one in particular?
I mean, the narrative, unless he wins, it's not going to change, right? I think we're beyond that moving forward. Everybody's going to say the same thing. He hit some really good golf shots that didn't get rewarded. And so, I mean, we'll talk about the par 5 where he made, just got a horrible break, going from a legitimate chance of making a 3 to having no chance to even make a birdie. Was a really bad break, and he continued to play good. The putts were just bad. I mean, you're under pressure. The one on 18, low and not hard enough, not confident. As soon as he hit it, we've all been there. I think it's all, it's like you said, though, it's just hard anyway. And then you add everything else on top. I actually, like, everybody's talking about what a great bunker shot Bryson hit. I didn't find that to be overly difficult of a shot. You could chunk it and it was going to roll up. You could hit it perfect and it was going to fly a little further. Don't get me wrong, it's still hard. But, I mean, for, like, the relative difficulty, they made it sound like he hit the best shot ever. It was very good, and then he made just a really good putt. Never had a chance to miss. So, I don't know. The deal for Rory, it's just kind of unfortunate, right? I don't even know what else to say about it. I mean, he's really good, and he finds himself at the top of the leaderboard, and you tend to talk about people more when they're in contention more. Therefore, he gets more criticism because he's there so often.
I thought, in terms of Bryson's final bunker shot, I thought the one thing that was nice about it for him is the fact that it was very clearly a swing where he could go full speed. Because, as you know, when you're under that much pressure, having to go at like 90% speed and figuring out what 90% is while your body feels like it just wants to go 150 miles an hour is difficult. Being able to just go 100 is definitely, I think, made that shot easier, but it's still a really difficult shot because the contact had to be really good.
And he didn't have anything to lose either, right? If he sculls it over the green, he's like, well, I had a really hard shot and I made bogey and we're in a playoff or whatever it may be. So, like, the benefit of having stands back there is if he does skull it, it's flying into the stands and he's getting a free drop and trying to get it up and down into a playoff. And if he chunks it, then he's, just making bogey and we're in a playoff that way. It was right situation. And like you said, he kind of had a plan for the shot. And I'm sure with as much sand as around that place, they've hit plenty of those shots all week practicing too.
The shot I want to talk about is the par 3 15th. Misses the green long. How closely were you watching, first of all? Like, do you have a big take on, was that an incorrect club decision? Was it just a bad shot? What do you think happened there?
I think adrenaline too has a little bit to do with it. Yeah, I mean, we were watching as closely as you can with kids running around, but it was I think he just maybe the wrong club, but I think that you combine with just a little bit of adrenaline and just a really good golf shot. I don't know. I mean, it's just impressive. Like I don't know. The golf was so good. The golf course was so good. 6 under. I mean, no rough and 6 under wins. Like you don't see that very often.
So I've got a pretty strong take on this one, and I think that you're probably going to agree with it. I think that there wasn't a bad decision on the club selection. I think what happened is that because of how firm the golf course was, because how firm the greens were, because of the pin location, he wanted to hit something held off. So maybe a slight cut, but at the very least, not drawing the way his ball likes to draw. I think that when you're under pressure, the most common miss in a swing is going to be you're defaulting to whatever feels natural for you. So he's trying to hit a cut. His natural swing path is a draw, so coming from the inside. I think what happened is he got stuck inside, was able to save it with his hands by closing the face, but in doing so, now the ball comes off a little bit hot and a little bit lower than he intended. And the main point that I want to make here is that this is why it's so damn important in a major championship to have a course as difficult, as challenging, as high quality as Pinehurst. Because if he had done that kind of thing at Valhalla, we wouldn't have noticed that he didn't hit the shot that he wanted to hit. It would have held the green. It would have been totally fine. But because of how small the margins were at Pinehurst, because of how well you had to execute on every shot, how precise you had to be, he ends up over the green on what wasn't that bad of a swing. He got stuck inside, but he was able to save it, hit it on line. But again, the margins are so small at Pinehurst. Now we see it as a mistake. People question the club selection. I just think it was Pinehurst being that damn good.
Yeah, it comes out lower with less spin. I mean, and it's just got less of a chance to hold it, and especially because I do feel like I don't feel like it was a bad choice, but I think he was still playing aggressive as well. So, yeah, it was almost like a shot that you see a lot of guys come up and out of, and he didn't come up and out of it. Instead, he just found a way to save it. I mean, that's probably a fairly good point. And I also think he was probably swinging harder at that point than maybe he does on a day-to-day basis.
It brings up a good question there, because all week he was kind of hitting the shot that the hole demanded. He was, playing Pinehurst instead of just playing golf swing over and over again. When you get under that much pressure on 15, suddenly you have I think at that point it was a one-shot lead. Do you think he should have said, okay, I know that I've approached this type of shot one way all week, but now that I'm under this much pressure, should I just default to what's natural for me? Or do you want him in that situation just playing it the way he had played that type of shot all week?
I mean, I'm not going to be critical of him in this situation. Like, I think it's pretty unfair to doubt what he's done to be in that position. Like, what I think if he was comfortable hitting that, kind of that fade, the spinnier fade that he's been hitting, like, I mean, it's kind of that, just ride the horse that got you there. You might as well keep going with it. And he seemed fully committed to it. He seemed like he did a lot of things the right way. So I think I'm on Rory's side here of like, I'm not going to criticize stuff like that, because it's just not fair and it's not right. And it's kind of irrelevant in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm in a complete agreement. I think the point that I wanted to make is, like, when you look at it as a whole, he lost a 2-shot lead. He got to 8 under, lost in regulation when the winner was at 6. So in that regard, yeah, he blew it. He choked. But when you break it down shot by shot, the only one that was really inexcusably bad was the missed putt on 16, because the putt on 18, I think, I don't think TV did it justice in the sense of how slippery that putt was. Smiley Kaufman also did him no favors by saying, oh, it's a left edge, left center putt, inside left to left center putt. And then we see Rory line up like a full cup out to the left and still missed low. I thought that if there's something to criticize on the putt, it seemed like he wasn't committed to speed in line? Like, does he want to hit a putt that is taking the break out just outside the left, or did he want to die it in? It felt like he was lined up to die it in, but then wanted to hit it through the break, and because of that, he kind of hesitated at impact, decelerated a little. You saw the putter come up. That's why he missed low.
Yeah, I mean, his whole posture was up and out.
Mhm.
You could just tell, like, he knew he missed it low as soon as he hit it. It was, like I said, I think there's a lot of those situations that obviously none that big of a situation, but we've been in pressure situations where you're up and out, and you've missed it low right out of the, as soon as you make contact.
And wouldn't you agree that's the type of miss that you have when you're afraid of hitting it too hard and through the break?
Yeah, it's just a more of an uncomfortable miss than a bad stroke miss. Like, you're just uncomfortable for some reason. I don't know. Everybody's a little bit different. I did see that's those two putts. That's the first time all year Rory's missed a putt inside 3 feet.
Yeah. I don't think the last one was inside 3 feet.
No, it was.
I thought it was 3 feet 8 inches.
Yeah, the one was inside 3 feet, and one was just over 3 feet.
Yeah, the one on 16 was, I think, like 2 feet 10 inches or something like that. So yeah, that one again, like, that's the one that without question was just the pressure got to him. He made a bad stroke. The other two quote unquote mistakes, I think, individually are very excusable mistakes, not just because of the pressure, but just because of how difficult Pinehurst is. Like, when people watch that putt on TV, I don't think they realize that, hey, if it was you standing at that green with that putt, you'd say, how the hell do I make this putt? It's turning immediately. It's going so fast. If I miss, it's going 10 feet by. Like, what do I do here? So yeah, I hope people realize how difficult that final putt was, and I hope people realize how difficult the tee shot on 15 was.
Yeah, it's just there's no let up on that golf course. You don't ever have a hole where you're like, all right, this is a gimme. I'm at least gonna make a par. We'll get a chance to make a birdie. I mean, you could argue that first par 5, but man, you saw a lot of balls even there. I mean, Siwoo hit an unbelievable shot in there early in the day, but outside of that, like, it was just hard to get it to. So many people, like, it rolled up the false front and rolled back down. And the further you got it up there, the further it rolled off into the junk. And you just saw some crazy breaks, and you were begging your ball to go into a greenside bunker, really.
Yeah. Before we get off Rory, I want to go back. You mentioned the shot on 5. I saw a lot of criticism of Pinehurst for the shot on 5, even from somebody that I think does a spectacular job on Twitter, Lou Stagner. Really data-centric guy, and I would say 90% of what he does on Twitter helps 90% of golfers become better golfers. So if you haven't checked out his Twitter, do so. But I thought he had a pretty terrible take on number 5, where he said something along the lines of, you shouldn't see good shots get penalized like that. And my counter to that is, well, Rory played a shot knowing what happens left of that hole, knowing what happens short of that hole, that demanded a great shot, and he only hit a good shot. So if you're playing a shot that demands greatness and you only hit good, yeah, that's the risk reward that you took on. Whereas he could have played that exact same shot, 15, 20 feet to the right, and he's still probably making 4, but now he has no chance of hitting it close and making 3.
Well, and the other side of that is, like, you just because and I know who you're talking about, and I disagree with his takes a lot more than you do, I'm sure, but he's more data for sure. But, like, just because he saw where it landed in the shot that was hit, he doesn't know for sure that was even a good shot by Rory, right? If Rory mentally knows that if he hits that shot, that's where that ball is going.
Yeah.
So, like, it may look like a good shot to him visually, but all that tells me is he's looking at data and doesn't understand golf. If you understand golf, you know that, yes, that where it landed may be what you think is what he's supposed to doing, but he knows, similar to the shot on 15, going over, it might be the same deal where it just came out lower than he was looking, spinning less, and that's why it did what it did. So it's just a bad. Just because somebody that is data driven thinks it's a good shot doesn't mean it was a well executed shot.
I guess that's sort of my point, that it was a surprising take from him, because of all people, he should know that it's very possible, as you said, that Rory wasn't even trying to hit it there. Maybe Rory was trying to play 15, 20 feet right and pulled it by 25 feet, and that's why it ended up where it did. Also on the broadcast on Friday, remember Rory, Scotty, and Xander all missed left and got penalized for it badly. And on the broadcast, they were saying you only miss it left once because once you do it, you'll learn you never should do it again. Rory did it again. So it was a mistake, even though it looked like a good shot. Again, he needed a great shot for that line.
Yeah, and I just think it proves I think deep down, like Rory knows, right? He's like, oh, I didn't execute the way I wanted to execute there, or I really got a bad break. Players also have pride, and they might also know they didn't execute a shot, but deep down they know that that's not what they were trying to do and not exactly where they were trying to hit it, and they did something wrong. So, like I said, I'm not going to defend, but I'm also not going to beat him down. He played great golf. I mean, it's fun to watch. I thought Finau played really good. We haven't talked about him much. I felt like his Saturday round could have been much, much better than what the score ended up, and kind of made that a 3-horse race. I mean, he still played really good on Sunday. He was kind of the one that I was like, whereas I thought Cantlay was the opposite. I thought Cantlay was getting a ton out of what he was doing and not necessarily hitting the best shots, and just ended up to kind of get the ball to be where it needed to be and get the breaks. I thought Finau was the other side, where he could have been much better and really had a chance to win.
At the same time, though, I also would say that was one of the best events that we've seen Finau have, at least of the last year, from a putting standpoint. Not that he gained a ton of strokes. He only gained about half a stroke per round with his putting, but he made a number of testers, and he was making them with great pace in the middle of the hole, something we haven't really seen from him. Most events, even when he's made putts, you can tell he's confident over them, and he maybe lips in on the low side or something like that. So there were positive signs from him on the greens, particularly under pressure. Yeah,
and like you said, and he looked confident doing it. I just like the way he played. I'll be honest. I really did. He was the one guy that I was like, I really, for some reason on, Saturday morning, I was like, Finau from the eye test has a really good chance to compete here. I also think, you saw the talent at the top of the leaderboard. I mean, obviously Scheffler wasn't there, and some of the other ones that are highly talented, but it provided the guys that we talk about all the time.
Not only that, but we started talking in April about the fact that U.S. Opens are the premier driving event. It's just year after year, distance matters a ton. Accuracy matters a ton. You don't get that combination together very often. Quail Hollow's kind of the only other event where both were significantly more predictive than on average. And then we see Bryson and Rory, clear numbers 1 and 2 off the tee in the world, finish number 1 and number 2. So I thought that was pretty cool. The last thing I'd say is Xander had a terrible driving week, also missed far more putts than we're used to seeing, still finished tied for 7th, only 5 back. What was your big takeaway from Xander? Because mine was that, man, this guy is going to be a factor almost every major.
Yeah, so the driving is weird to me. I can't figure it out. I can't figure out if maybe it's just bad eye lines and he just kind of struggled with the dynamic of what he was looking at. Or if he just, just played bad this week, or maybe a combo of both. But generally, there's usually, if you're driving it really good and then all of a sudden struggle with it, there's usually there's an underlying issue, and I don't really know what that was for him. It just didn't seem to be
a lot more cuts off the tee than we're accustomed to seeing. So I wonder if it was he was a little bit too psyched out by the course, feeling like he couldn't just hit his shot on a lot of the holes and had to hit the shot that the hole, quote unquote, demanded. Maybe there was something like that going on. But yeah, I'm with you. It didn't seem like he was confident on the tee from the start.
Yeah. And by the way, can we talk about the sham? I just got a text message. I guess Bryson's not going to be on the Olympic team. Well, that's to have the season he's had. What is that? 6th, the 2nd, and a win in the majors. Obviously, the most likable guy on tour. Obviously, has the most fans on tour right now out of anybody. What are we doing here?
Well, that's the problem. He's not, quote unquote, on tour. So It's a tough one because I think so. There are layers to this conversation. For one thing, like I think it's noteworthy that his best finish on Live is fourth. In fact, he only has one finish on Live this season better than his worst finish in a major. So it's not like he's just been dominating the world week after week. He's had 3 fantastic appearances in majors, undeniable. His ceiling, his consistency in these majors, the fact that he shows up in the biggest moments, I think it's clear that he deserves a spot, but I also don't think it's worth like skipping over the fact that he is still one of the guys who chose to go to the Live knowing that this sort of thing was probably off the table for him. So
did he know that? Do you think he knew that? Do you think they were like, hey, if you do this, because the Olympics are completely different. It's its own committee. Do you think they were like, hey, if you go to Live, you can't be in the Olympics? I don't think. I bet that conversation never happened.
I think that he at the very least knew that it was a risk he was taking with the Olympics as well. Like it's not something that he would have said, oh, I know that I might not be exempt into all majors. I know that I might, I know that I probably won't get official World Golf Rankings points, but I might be chosen by the Olympic Committee. I don't even know how the Olympic Committee worked. Like, was it just a committee deciding on 4 guys, or was there a point system? In which case, if there was a point system, then he probably knew that he wasn't going to be getting points in any event other than the majors.
Yeah, and I don't know. I just know that I mean, they said that the PGA Tour and the PIF had they signed some kind of agreement this week of some sort. Nobody really knows the details on it, but I don't know. I just think we're doing it all wrong if you don't give him a spot in the Olympics. It's the most polar. No, I'm not going to compare it to women's basketball, but it's Caitlin Clark all over again, right? Yeah. I mean, the viewership you're going to gain. I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to watch Patrick Cantlay play, whereas I would watch Bryson play. Like, Bryson would represent the U.S. better than Cantlay.
So I 100% agree with that point, that by not having Bryson, you're hurting the sport as a whole. But I think that the qualification process was already set in stone. Like, I don't think this was something that they could have changed just to get Bryson in. I think that would have created just as much of an issue as we have now. Do I wish that there was like something in there where they could have selected him? Yeah, but it seems to me like I'm doing some brief research right now just on the spot. It seems like there was an official World Golf Ranking point system for the Olympics that they had to qualify. And yeah, Olympic Golf Ranking features 60 qualifiers representing 32 different countries. Everyone in the top 15 was eligible with a limit of 4 players from a given country. So that's why the U.S. has 4: Scotty, Xander, Wyndham Clark, and Morikawa. So it's not like Cantlay's in there.
Yeah, but you get my. I mean, that was just a reference, but
right. So I guess my point is, yes, I think that both the U.S. and the sport of golf would be much better off with Bryson in the Olympics. But I think that was a risk that Bryson knew he was taking. I think that's now confirmed because there's a ranking system based on points. It's not just, it's not just a group of guys saying, okay, who would best represent us here in the Olympics, and that they didn't choose Bryson. So it's bad for the sport. It's bad for the team that he's not on it, but I don't know how he would have been on it other than not making the decision to go to Live.
Well, so this world, and we're going to go down a different rabbit hole, but this World Golf Ranking Points is such a sham too, because they first blame it on 72 holes. Well, there's a 3rd level tour in Scotland that Paul Lowry owns that gets World Golf Ranking Points, and they only play 54 holes. And it's a feeder into the challenge. It's a feeder into the Challenge Tour and feeder into the DP World Tour, and they get World Golf Ranking Points.
So I've heard this before. I didn't dive into it deeply, so I don't know the exact specifics. But I think that there was something that they went back to that tour and said, if you do this, we'll give you your points. And they did it. They have said to Liv, if you do this, you'll get it. Liv has not made a single change in effort to gain those points.
But
They
it's not
just
necessarily. I don't know what it is. It's not the 72 hole. They don't play 72 holes over there. So what? I mean, I don't understand what. Like that's literally the only leg that the World Golf Ranking Points is standing on is the non 72 holes. What are you going to say? You got to wear pants to get World Golf Ranking points? I mean, like how ridiculous
I
are you
have
going to
a
make?
feeling shotgun start has something to do with it.
Really? Maybe.
I think so. I
So
mean,
you
I
think if
don't
we
know.
did, if you think we did 54
So
holes and no shotgun start, you think that?
so again, I'll say I don't know what the specifics are, but I do know that the official World Golf Rankings said to them, meet these requirements, meet any of them, and they chose not to. So if you're the official World Golf Rankings and you say to them, make a change, and they don't make a change, you're going to say, well, they didn't make a change, but Bryson's great and everyone loves him, so we should now let them in? Or is it on Liv to actually make a change? And maybe the fact that Bryson has become so popular, maybe that's a reason for them to make a change. But I don't know why you put all the onus on the official World Golf Ranking system.
I just think it's a bunch of old heads that are sitting around that have that like it's just kind of they're going to sit on their high horse and not be reasonable. That's just my opinion. I think they're very Monahan. They're very like a lot like Monahan. I think they're all kind of cut from the same cloth. And so I just don't think that they're being reasonable about it. That being said, like I think that Liv could do certain things, yes, but the point of the World Golf Ranking Points is not to tell people how to run their tour. It's to rank the best players in the world. Like it's the point is never to, hey, this is how you should run golf. That's not their purpose. Their purpose is to rank the players in the world. That's it. And like, there's no way, what you can make any point you want. Shotgun start, 54 holes. There's no way that they are ranking the best players in the world in the proper order right now.
I think so. I'm going to come at this from a very mathematical perspective here, because I think that you hit on something really good there, which is the point is to rank players in the best way possible. One major issue is field size, because remember what I said about Bryson. His best finish is 4th. His second best finish on Liv this year is T6. So in that regard, like, it would be really, really difficult with their field size to get any kind of reasonable ranking from that, because you've had Brooks play terribly. You've had Dustin Johnson play awfully there. Cam Smith hasn't done much. Like, look at the guys who are winning on Liv. It's creating this thing where you'd either really, really have to punish those guys in the world rankings points for being as bad as they've been on Liv, or you'd be getting these bad players on Liv who are outperforming these really good players, and then they go to majors and stink it up, or they're not even qualified, that are suddenly getting like this massive boost in the World Golf Rankings based on who they're beating. So I think that field size might have another major thing to do with the fact that they're not getting points, because from a mathematical perspective, like, any way that I know of for how to create a ranking system would be drastically inflating the rankings of the guys who we know aren't that good but are performing pretty well in Live events, because the best players just don't care how they do there.
Yeah, and there's definitely something to be said about that. I'm just saying they're not doing their job of ranking the players properly right now. And I think that is abundantly clear. Now, to say that I have the answer of how they should do it, I'm not saying that either. I just think it's clear that they are not doing it correctly. And I also, like, a kind of a counterpoint to you is I think that there is a lot of truth to what you say, but I also think that some of these guys that are winning these live events are just like some of the guys that are winning PGA Tour events that show the volatility of golf and the volatility of these players, because a lot of these are still really good players that are winning over there.
Yeah, but I think the difference is we can't know if a win on Live, especially when it's a week where all the best players play poorly, if that would be a 3rd place finish in a PGA Tour event. Would that be a win in a PGA Tour event, or would that be an 18th place finish in a PGA Tour event, which are drastically different?
Okay.
So to your point, I agree. The official World Golf Rankings, as of right now, are not doing the best job that they can do to rank players. My point is, I think they've gone to Live and said, in order to do the best job of ranking players, including your players, we need you to make X amount of these changes, this, and that, and they haven't made any. So until they do, until they help the official World Golf Rankings actually rank their guys well, I don't know how you put that on them. That's my point.
Yeah, I don't know if there's an answer. I just know that it's right now it's not correct, and I don't think it's being done, and I just don't think. I think that the World Golf Ranking people are out of line for telling Liv how to run their tour. That's not your job of how to run a tour, what to do. Your job is to rank players, not anything else. And so let's go back to doing your job. That's it. That's the only, and like I said, I'm not telling them it's their job to figure out how to do it the best way, but right now it's not right. And they know that. And they're, I mean, it's obviously being done unfairly. So I just think that they can't just come up with all these stipulations all of a sudden and be like, oh, you got to do this when they're creating a different tour that is really, I mean, everybody that I talk to that loves the shotgun start, like that has been to the event. We've got a group that went to the Chicago event from our club, like 8 or 10 of them. They're like, it was awesome. We got there, we were there for 6 hours. We showed up, we watched them hit balls. We went and sat in a tent. We watched every player come by. We followed Bryson for 4 holes, went back and sat in the tent and just had a great time. And we were 6 hours later, we could still enjoy the rest of our day in Chicago. And we got to see every single player come through. So,
yeah,
I mean, there's something to be said about that too, right? I mean, like the fan experience is really good.
Yeah, it's the shotgun start is nice for the live experience, for the fan experience, but it's kind of awful for the quality integrity of the golf tournament itself, because particularly like at the end of rounds when the pressure's on, like imagine finishing the Players Championship on the second hole, on the 8th hole, something like that, right? Like it completely ruins the script of the round, and the fact that you have to hit those shots on 17, on 18, on 16, 17, 18 under the most pressure possible. So,
and that may be something that the Liv might need to do. Hey, let's shotgun start the first 2 rounds and tee time the last round. Yeah. Like there's answers to this that are very viable that I don't know why they're not doing. And both sides are being so hard-headed that like nobody will meet in the middle. And so anyway, I didn't mean to go onto this rant but Bryson and just the way that it's all happened and how popular he's been this year. I just think that we've got to do better as far as just golf in general.
So I first of all, I think this is actually a really good conversation to have. I think most golf fans are interested in this conversation because they want this to come to some kind of resolution. The last thing I'll say on that is, you said, I don't know why they can't meet in the middle. I'm not sure that we can say that both sides aren't willing to meet in the middle. I think for all we know, the official World Golf Ranking System is saying, meet us in the middle, make one of these 3 changes that we requested, make 2 of these 4 that we've requested, and they haven't made any. I don't know that. Maybe they are just as unwilling to meet in the middle, but I know for certain that Liv is unwilling to meet in the middle. So until I know otherwise, that's my biggest objection.
Yeah, and fair. I just in leading back into Bryson, right, with the Liv stuff, and I think he's one of the guys that's really benefited. I think that I like Bryson more because he kind of had a bit when he came out. Like he kind of had this thing, and it was kind of him, and that was his bit. And he's kind of like been like, all right, maybe that just wasn't me, and I was doing too much for show. And now I think you're starting to see like who Bryson DeChambeau is, right? Like, I mean, he's signing autographs in the middle of a final round of the U.S. Open, and like, you know, literally gets over a shot and says, "Don't be mad at me because I'm going to lay up." Like, I mean, like. There's nobody else that does that. And that's just him being him, right? He's not doing that. He didn't say that to make anybody happy, right? He's just having fun, and that's who he is. So I like that I think he's grown up. I think he's a different person than when he played on the PGA Tour exclusively. I think that he still works equally as hard, but I just think he's just done what we've all done, and that's grown up.
Mm-hmm. I was just playing in the Vermont Open. I stunk, by the way. Turns out you need to play golf a decent amount to actually go play in a tournament and play well. Who knew? But I was talking to both of the guys in my group about this because I think one interesting thing about Bryson that makes him so different from most of the other live players is we can tell beyond a shadow of a doubt that he loves golf. He's obsessed with golf. He's obsessed with being the best player that he can be. We really can't say that about anybody else. In fact, we can pretty confidently say Dustin Johnson doesn't care at all about golf, does not love golf. Cam Smith, does he love golf? I don't know. Maybe he likes competing, but I think a big part of why people have completely turned in Bryson's favor is because we see how much he loves the game that we all love, and the fact that, as you said, like he's also learned to become this fantastic showman in the middle of the moment.
Yeah, and it feels genuine too. Like
Mhm.
I don't feel like he's faking it.
And I think part of the reason why it feels genuine and why we believe it so much is because we can see how obsessed he is with being the best golfer he can be. Like to have the creativity, let alone the actual like personal expertise, but to just have the creativity to even have the thought in general to create your own golf clubs that fit your swing the best. That's kind of awesome.
Yeah, I mean the bulge and roll deal is so great.
Mm-hmm.
I mean
it's cool.
It's just fascinating, and he's 1,000,000% right. Like, did you watch him talk about it? Like,
Yeah.
he's not like he's 1,000,000% right, and the fact that nobody else has done it. But I also think there's not very many people that can swing a 5-iron fast enough for that to matter, including
Yeah,
guys.
I'd also say I kind of think that should be banned, and that it's just that at this point his irons are conforming only because no one has had the idea to do this before, so they didn't even know that they had to make that non-conforming.
Yeah, but I think if you're going to ban it, you have to ban it in everything, the driver and everything. It's got to be a plus or minus within a certain.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Last thing on the Open, I thought one of the coolest things about his win was the fact that the number one criticism of his win at Oak Hill was that the only skill that he showed was the ability to drive the ball far. He also putted really well that week, but like everyone said, it was just bomb and gouge. There was no skill beyond the distance that he won with. And here at Pinehurst, you can even make the case that at least on Sunday, he won because of how well he scrambled. His creativity around the greens, his execution on and around the greens. So that part I thought was really cool to see.
Yeah. It's just impressive. And I tell you what, Rory's chipping was impressive too. Like shallow, like super shallow, very little divot. There wasn't like a stabby chip, right? And they kind of debunked our theory of we thought there was going to be a lot more putting.
Yeah.
I think there was a lot less putting around the green than what I thought there was going to be.
Very interesting course fit model this week. The only aspect that is more predictive than usual this week is driving accuracy. Distance is way down, and then all of iron play, around the green play, and putting down slightly. What are your thoughts, and what's your big takeaway from that course fit model?
Yeah, shortest golf course on tour this year. I hate it's such a weird, like what I don't understand what the tour is doing here, right? Elevated event, US Open, elevated event.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it all depends on how the golf course plays. I think it's been pretty hot up there this year, so it's probably they can't let it dry out as much, so it should be a little bit softer. Yeah, we're gonna go from a week where you couldn't make a birdie to a week that people are going to be on 59 watch. So it's kind of a unique back-to-back events. I just wonder the grind hangover, right? Who has a grind hangover and who is going to be ready to go just make a million birdies?
They have already announced, by the way, that the Memorial is moving back to Memorial Day weekend next year. Seemed like a pretty obvious choice to begin with, but yeah, I hate the elevated event after a major anyway, and making it 3 weeks in a row just seems like a terrible idea. My big takeaway from that course fit model, by the way, and remember that we hit a Keegan 100-1 outright here last year, so this fits that as well, is that when you have so many aspects less predictive than usual, it creates less of a gap between the best in the field, Scotty, Schauffele, Morikawa, etc., and those guys in the mid-range. So I think the 50 to 100 to 1, that range is the sweet spot. My two bets, pretty much in that range. Sepp Straka is down to 40 to 1. Still like that as an each way. We've got him at 3% to win. And then Billy Horschel, 90 to 1. We've got at 1.6% to win. Horschel, by the way, profiles extremely similarly right now to Keegan a year ago. Similar event to event standard deviation where they are as volatile as anybody. Horschel's skill set, very reminiscent of Keegan's as well. You remember at that time last year, it's like Keegan's putter was suddenly out of this world. He turned it into a strength, accurate off the tee. The big difference is that Horschel isn't the iron player that Keegan was a year ago, but we also know he can get hot with his iron. So I really, really like Billy this week. And of course, Billy's also a better putter long-term than Keegan. So I think 90 to 1 and on DraftKings at 7,300, I've got a lot of interest in Horschel.
Yeah, so I've got a little bit more. I definitely like Horschel. I like Horschel a little bit more on grinding type of golf courses than I do a birdie fest like this personally. I'd rather go down a couple $100 to Zalatoris, I think, this week, because I think that the distance isn't going to hurt. He doesn't need to be a super high spin like he was last year. And 7,100, if you would have said a year ago, pre-injury that you were going to get Zalatoris 7,100 on a course like this, I think you would have probably laughed.
Probably. Another interesting guy, Tom Hoagie, 7,000, seems to be projecting pretty well. Also somebody that I think I do lean towards when it's easier because he can make so many birdies. His short game less likely to really hurt him. Some other names on the list.
What do you think? So the one that stuck out to me is that kid that's coming out that won the PGA Tour University.
Michael Thorbjornsen.
Yeah.
I had no idea what to think of him.
So just watching, obviously watching college golf and watching him play golf, definitely has the ability. I found out this week playing the Texas State AM. It took 1 under to make the cut at a 7,600-yard golf course walking when it was 100 degrees. I shot even for 2 days. I played fine. That's a big boy golf course for me at Trinity Forest where they played the tour event. I think the PGA Tour cut there was only 1 or 2 under, and we played almost the exact same conditions. We didn't play up boxes or nothing. So, some of these top-level amateurs are really good.
Yeah. There's also, we've talked about it before, it's not that tough to make cuts on the tour because a much larger percentage of the field actually makes it. Like most mini tour events, it's maybe a third of the field getting in. The Vermont Open I just played in, I think it was top 40 out of 131 or something like that. So it becomes tougher to make the cut, even though the field strength obviously is a lot worse.
Yeah. But my point being is I wouldn't be surprised. A super talented kid, I wouldn't be surprised if he came out in a place that you can make a million birdies and competes right out of the chute. So we'll see. 6,500 might be worth a dart, I think, especially if I'm going to try to play. I'd like to play some of these like Finau. I'm going to go back to Victor Hovland this week. I feel like this is a much better fit. I think we played Hovland a lot because we thought he was going to be able to putt from everywhere, and that wasn't the case.
Yep.
So that's kind of on us for I think if we would have known how much chipping was going to be required off tight lies, we probably would not have played Hovland. Would you agree with that?
Definitely. And I played Oberg in one and done, and I felt really good about that after 2 days. Not so good after 3 and really bad after 4. But yeah, so weirdly, all of Bryson, Hovland, and Oberg all kind of fit the narrative of, hey, if they get to putt around the greens, it's going to be even better for them. Bryson obviously still scrambled extremely well. Oberg and Hovland had their fair share of struggles around the green, to say the least. Where are you thinking this week for one and done?
I think that I'm probably going to land on Cantlay. He's played really, really good here. He showed signs of it last week. And if there's anybody that's immune to the U.S. Open hangover to come back and win an elevated event, I think Cantlay would fit that narrative. That's probably that was my initial thought. I know he has played well here before. So Yeah, I don't really know where else I would think. Yeah, I mean, he's got 6 top 15s since 2018 here.
It's so tough for me to land on Cantlay. He's the second. He has the second worst expected strokes gained projection of anybody over $7,500 on DraftKings. That's from a data perspective. That's just how bad he's been. Yeah, he played well last week, and I have said before, like I think if there is one sort of not necessarily blind spot, but one less than stellar area to the model, the kind of guy that the model is always going to underproject, it's the player who has had a long track record of being great, goes through an extended cold streak, period of struggle, whatever
whatever you want to call it,
and then suddenly figures it out again. Maybe Cantlay's that guy, but it's also possible that like last week was an aberration and Cantlay's going to go right back to being not great. So I don't really know.
I mean, I could get behind playing Oberg on our side of it too. I don't think we've used him in the last elevated event. He's the most talented guy we have left. Like once again, we're going to go back to the chipping's not going to hurt him as much here. It's it's easier grass to chip off of, even out of the fairway, and the rough is really simple. Talk about it all the time. So if you wanted to go there, I would 100% be on board in the last elevated event to go with Oberg.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense to me. The only other aspect to it is it is worth asking, are we far enough back now? Let me see. I think we're in like 1,600th place or something like that, which is still like probably top 25%, maybe not quite that good. Where we need to be thinking about who's a 1% play that could win. Somebody like who's this year's Keegan, basically, where if he wins and we've got him at 1%, it really vaults us. Like how much would an Oberg win actually do? And for added context there, and my personal entry, at some point in the round on Friday, Oberg was winning and Bryson was tied for 4th. And I had only gone from like 1,000 place to 250th or something. So if we had an Oberg win this week, would we go from 1,600th to 500th? Would we go to 700th? I don't really know what the answer is. Whereas maybe if we found like a 1% winner, let's say it was Horschel or Sepp Straka, someone like that, would that suddenly give us a chance to get into the top 250 or the top 100, something like that? Again, I don't really know the answer, but I think it is worth wondering how contrarian we should be this week.
Well, I think if it wasn't an elevated event, I think it would be different. But I think just since it's an elevated event, you just got to play the most talented. Looking back at it, we had Bryson circled for last week, and almost like we kind of talked about this earlier in the year of like what weeks do we just eat the chalk and stick with what we think we should play. He fits so well in every direction of everything that we did. We should have, hindsight's obviously it's easier to say that now, but almost like, if we go DeChambeau last week, Oberg this week, we're chalky, but we're getting the most out of them we can get. So what's the difference?
Yeah, the only thing I'd say there is if we had the Bryson win last week, I think we only would have moved up to like 600. Whereas if we had the Hovland win, I think we would have been 200, something like that. So I think it was a worthwhile risk. It's a shame that we weren't in position where it would have made sense to be as chalky as we would have liked to be, because we nailed the read on the US Open. It's just, I think given the place that we were in, which was, I think, like 1,200 already, it made sense to go off the board and perfect read as well in the ownership. Bryson was one of the highest owned players in any event this entire season. Hovland was less than 4%. So we nailed the read. It's just we didn't get the outcome we needed for one and done. In the outright market, that 46-1 hit was pretty solid.
Yeah, no doubt. And we talked about it before we decided to go with Hovland of like, are we trying to win or just are we trying to finish in the money? So, it is what it is. I just think I would hate to not use somebody as talented as Oberg in one and done in an elevated event, with this being the last one. Like, when else are we going to get a chance to use them? Unless we were just like, hey, we're going to use them in not use a live guy there. That would be the only other argument.
Yeah, that's fair. I should also double check the schedule of the contest and make sure that this is the last like really high dollar entry other than the Open Championship, because it may be like it uses the first week of the playoffs or something like that. So I'll double check that. We'll make our final decision and let everybody know in the chat. Speaking of, we will also have an underdog play of the week. Last week's featured underdog play, the 3-pick, it hit. Also the one, remember we were torn on whether to use Bryson or Rory. They both hit. So if you played them both, those were two really nice wins. Over $1,000 for myself. We also went like 5 of 6, nearly 6 for 6 on a bunch of other plays that included some of Zach's WNBA picks, some MLB plays. So it was a very, very successful underdog week. Hopefully we can do more of the same. We'd have a play here on stream for you guys, but in Vermont, I can only see and play fantasy points props. They don't have any of those up yet for PGA. So once I'm home, which will be tomorrow, we can look at and come up with some underdog plays. So we'll see you in the Pick'em Discord channel. And then, of course, GPP Scores ownership will be up later tonight, and we'll get into those once we have them. So thanks, everybody, as always, for tuning in. We will catch you next time.